Imagine locking your classroom door for the summer, taking a heavy sigh of just pure, unadulterated relief.
Right, the best feeling.
Oh, exactly. But you're completely unaware that a student you literally just said a polite goodbye to, well, he has already stolen your home address.
Hmm, that is terrifying.
It really is. And today we are looking at why our most vulnerable moments happen right when we think we've crossed the finish line. Welcome to today's deep dive.
Yeah, that transition period. I mean, the exact moment the structure and, the daily grind of the school year just dissolves. It creates this massive psychological blind spot.
Totally.
You enter this liminal space between one stage of life and the next, and your guard just drops completely.
And that blind spot is exactly what we are plunging into today. We've got a stack of source material from the YouTube channel Mr. Nightmare. It's a collection of 3 purportedly true real-life accounts.
Right, the end of school year ones.
Exactly. But our mission today isn't to just sit around and tell spooky campfire stories. We are here to look way beyond the surface level scares. We want to extract the underlying sociological and psychological tension hiding inside these events.
Because the real terror in these accounts, it doesn't come from the supernatural or the jump scares. It comes from dissecting the unexpected vulnerabilities of human behavior.
Yeah.
It's about looking at the mechanics of why certain situations completely shatter our perceived safety.
And as someone tuning into this deep dive, you are probably here because you love those aha moments. You appreciate thoroughly understanding different perspectives and, getting a shortcut to the deeper mechanisms of how people operate.
Which these case studies provide perfectly.
Oh, absolutely. You're going to see how these 3 different accounts perfectly demonstrate the fragility of the systems we rely on to feel secure. And all 3 of these events happen right on that cusp as the school year ends.
Right.
So the first account, it drops us into an old private Catholic high school with a very, very dark architectural history.
The source material paints a very specific picture of this environment. I mean, before it was an educational facility, this building was a functional hospital back in the 1950s, specifically dealing with tuberculosis patients.
Right, which is already a heavy vibe. And according to local lore, when the school was being constructed, workers unearthed skeletal remains.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so the rumor circulating among the students was that to avoid spreading the sickness back in the day, bodies were disposed of in this massive underground tunneling system connecting the hospital to another building.
Of course.
So naturally, the school is just practically vibrating with urban legends, and enter a student named Steve, who is essentially the school bully.
Right, Steve. So Steve has been tormenting the protagonist all year. This kid is a self-described nerd, and towards the very end of the school term, Steve decides to, cement his reputation by breaking into this legendary school at night.
Just to pull an elaborate prank, which he completely botches. I mean, he trashes some classrooms, steals red paint from the art room, and writes these super cliche horror movie tropes on the lockers.
Like what?
Things like, get out your soul is next and death is coming.
Wow, very original.
So original, but the twist is that Steve gets caught because he basically terrifies himself. He wanders near the basement and later claims he hears this evil, unnatural whispering echoing up from the darkness.
And he just bolts.
He runs away screaming. The school matches his handwriting from the lockers, and he gets expelled right before summer.
And this creates a really fascinating inverted social dynamic.
How so?
Well, the rest of the student body suddenly views Steve, the bully, as this brave martyr who faced down ancient evil spirits,
Oh, I see.
which infuriates the protagonist and his friend group. They know Steve is a liar, and they totally resent him getting this mythical status.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because their reaction is so counterintuitive, the protagonist and his friends decide that on the literal last day of school, they are going to break in themselves. Their goal is entirely logical. They want to go to the basement, prove there are no ghosts, gather empirical evidence that Steve is just a coward, and leave.
And they have an end to.
Yeah, one of their friends, Carson, has a mom who works as a janitor, so they swipe her master key.
They view themselves as the logical ones here. I mean, they want to replace local myth with hard, undeniable evidence.
Which is admirable, but maybe not smart.
No, definitely not. They head into this school on a cold, early summer night, armed with, nothing but cheap dollar store flashlights and their own skepticism.
Right. So they get down into this massive, dusty basement, and it goes on forever. It's full of old textbooks, discarded Christmas decorations, and these really creepy old religious statues.
Classic creepy basement.
Very that. Finally, in a freezing corner behind some boxes, they find it. It's a hole in the concrete wall about the size of a beach ball, leading into a pitch-black tunnel.
The rumored tuberculosis tunnel.
Exactly. They play rock, paper, scissors, the protagonist loses, and he begins to crawl inside.
And this is where their strict reliance on cold logic completely fails to protect them.
Seriously, he's crawling on his stomach, and he starts hearing a whooshing sound, but it's not wind. It morphs into a distinct whisper.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he shines his cheap flashlight ahead, and about 15 feet away in the tunnel, there is a person squatting in the dirt.
Not a ghost.
Not a 1950s ghost at all. A decrepit, emaciated man with no shirt, ribs showing, and vacant, half-opened eyes.
That is so much worse.
The protagonist stammers out a question, just asking if he's okay, and this feral squatter makes an unnatural noise and literally lunges at him.
The kid has to frantically scramble backward out of the hole, and this squatter actually follows him out into the basement.
Wait, really?
Yeah, he's thrashing around trying to grab the kid before they all just sprint up the stairs and escape the building.
Wow. Okay, but wait, I'm looking at how this kid reacted after the fact, and he actually feels victorious because his logic won out.
Right, he proved there were no ghosts.
Exactly, just a transient man finding shelter in an old utility tunnel. But he's entirely missing the point. It's like poking a sleeping bear just to prove the bear is a myth.
That's a great way to put it.
I mean, doesn't the terrifying reality of a feral, highly aggressive human living in the basement almost validate why the urban legends existed in the first place?
Oh, absolutely.
Debunking that ghost story was like cutting the alarm wire to a bank vault because the siren sound was annoying. You silence the noise, but you just open the door for the actual robbers.
What's fascinating here is how urban legends actually function anthropologically.
Oh.
I mean, that is a phenomenal way to frame it.
Right.
We often dismiss folklore and ghost stories as just silly tales meant to scare children.
Right.
But sociologically, they serve as highly effective protective psychological barriers against very real physical dangers.
Like a cultural warning label?
Precisely. Consider the utility of the myth. If a community tells teenagers, hey, don't go into the abandoned sub-basements because the structural integrity is compromised, the air quality is toxic, and there might be dangerous, desperate individuals hiding down there.
A teenager's going to ignore that.
Completely.
Right.
Their developing prefrontal cortex hears that as a challenge. They think, oh, I can handle a physical threat.
Yeah, I'm tough.
Right. But if the community says, the restless, diseased souls of tuberculosis victims will drag you to the underworld if you step foot down there, the kids stay away.
That makes so much sense.
The myth does the heavy lifting of keeping the community safe from the actual physical hazard.
So by stripping away the myth of the supernatural with their flashlights and their logic, they essentially bypass their own community's security system.
Yes.
They walked right into a grim physical reality that was infinitely more dangerous than a phantom.
We all have those spaces, whether they're metaphorical or literal, that we want to investigate with pure, cold logic. We want to debunk the things that scare us.
Of course we do.
But this scenario illustrates perfectly that sometimes the reality waiting for you in the dark is far more threatening than the myth you were so desperate to disprove.
Wow. Well, that physical barrier of a school basement is one thing. But what happens when the barrier isn't physical but geographical? That's the vulnerability exposed in the second account. We are moving from a threat locked in a basement to a threat that completely obliterates the concept of distance.
And specifically, the illusion that moving away from a problem actually solves it.
Here is the setup. A college student named Kip finishes his semester and drives 8 hours, literally crossing 2 state lines, to return to his hometown for the summer.
A pretty solid distance.
Yeah. The transition into summer freedom is in full swing. His friend Logan is throwing a massive welcome-back party at his parents' remote mansion, which is located in a heavily wooded, really isolated area.
And Logan's parents are out of town, so the guest list completely spirals out of control.
Naturally. On a whim, because it's the end of May and people want to cut loose, they make it a makeshift Halloween costume party.
Kip throws on a cheap plastic Jason or Casey Jones hockey mask. And the source material notes that because of the pop culture at the time, a lot of the girls are wearing identical masks inspired by the movie The Purge.
Yeah, and those masks do a lot of heavy lifting here. They create this atmosphere of total anonymity.
Which is key.
Right. So Kip is hanging out by the pool, and he spots a girl inside the house wearing a bright gold masquerade mask. They wave at each other through the glass.
Innocent enough.
Sure. Later, he's swimming, still wearing his hockey mask. looks up, and sees her walking away from the lights of the party toward the dark tree line of the forest that borders this massive property.
Oh, no.
Yeah. She stops, turns, and waves for him to follow her into the woods.
And he completely lowers his guard. I mean, he leaves the loud music, the safety of the crowd, the illumination of the house, and enters the isolation of the trees just to follow a stranger.
He's freezing, wearing just a bathing suit and a hockey mask, wandering into the dark, calling out for her.
Horrible idea.
Truly. She playfully calls back from the darkness, "Don't go back yet, come and find me first."
Creepy.
He stumbles upon her gold mask, discarded on the dirt. Then he spots her a few feet away. She's wearing a white tank top, black shorts, and her dark hair is draped forward, completely obscuring her face.
Okay, my alarm bells are ringing.
Same. He walks up, introduces himself as Kip, and holds out the gold mask.
And her response just shatters the entire illusion of the party.
What does she do?
She doesn't take the mask. She just stares at him and says, "I know who you are."
Ugh, chills.
She lifts her head, and it's his ex-girlfriend from college.
The college that is 8 hours and 2 states away?
Yes. They'd only dated for a few weeks, and Kip ended it because she was exhibiting incredibly controlling behavior.
Like what kind of behavior?
Demanding to read his private emails, waiting uninvited in his dorm room, interrogating him if he was literally 2 minutes late.
Okay, major red flag. So he thought it was a quick, harmless breakup.
Exactly. But suddenly, he hears a branch snap to his left, and she is charging at him with a solid metal baseball bat.
Wait, a bat?
A bat. She takes a full overhead swing, aimed directly at his head. He barely dives out of the way, scrambles up, and just runs blindly back to the lights of the party.
That is insane. And Logan, the friend hosting the party, refuses to call the police because he doesn't want to get in legal trouble for the underage drinking happening on the property.
Right, teenagers. So Kip spends the entire night locked inside, just staring out the windows into the dark tree line, waiting to see if she comes back.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the source notes that Kip spends the rest of his life reflecting on this, and he completely changes his lifestyle.
He stops partying, right?
Yeah, he tells the audience to be hyper careful about what you say to people, because a harmless breakup to you might not be harmless to them. But I am not buying his guilt here at all. No. Why is he taking the blame for this? She drove 8 hours across state lines and brought a metal bat into the woods. That is not a failure of communication on his part. That is premeditated violence.
Your pushback is entirely justified. What Kip is displaying is a very classic, albeit misdirected trauma response.
Makes sense.
It's an attempt to regain an internal locus of control. If he can convince himself that his words or his casual approach to the breakup caused the event, then his brain believes he can prevent it from ever happening again simply by modifying his own future behavior.
Ah, so it's a coping mechanism to make the world feel predictable again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the much more terrifying implication here isn't about breakups. It's about the total collapse of distance.
Yeah, 8 hours of driving used to mean something. It used to be a barrier.
Historically, a geographic boundary was a highly effective physical shield. If you crossed the wrong person or made a mistake, you could move away. The distance protected you. But this case study perfectly illustrates how modern connectivity destroys geographical boundaries. He had posted about attending this party on Instagram.
Oh, of course he did.
That digital breadcrumb trail allowed a threat from his past to track him down with pinpoint accuracy, completely invading the perceived safe haven of his hometown.
And the masks and the party provided this totally false sense of security. I mean, he thought he was playing a fun, anonymous game with a stranger, acting under the rules of a party environment.
But he was actually being hunted by his own history.
It is a brilliant, terrifying example of how out of sight, out of mind simply does not exist in a digitally connected world.
And notice the spatial dynamics, too. The threat operated strictly on the margins. She waited in the tree line, exactly where the artificial light from the party ended and the darkness began, to lure him out of his safe zone.
Which brings us to a fascinating escalation. Because if Kip's story is about a threat working on the perimeter of a property, the final account completely bypasses the perimeter.
Right into the home.
Exactly. It enters the most intimate, heavily protected space possible, the interior of the home.
The ultimate violation of sanctuary.
So this source comes from a substitute teacher. She gets a long-term assignment covering a senior high school history class from April until the end of June.
Okay.
Now, just as an aside, she taught a curriculum focused heavily on debate and government. We're just impartially reporting the source material here, but she apparently facilitated healthy debates about communicating with the differing political views.
Which is great. Keeping a room full of seniors engaged right before graduation is no small feat.
Seriously. She succeeds so well that the principal even pulls her aside on the last half day of school to discuss hiring her full-time in the fall.
It's the perfect triumphant end to the school year.
It really is. She says goodbye to the principal, but realizes she left her purse back in her classroom. Now, the school is practically empty at this point. She walks back into her room and is startled to find one of her students.
Who is it?
It's a brilliant but notoriously quiet kid named Ben. He's just standing silently next to her desk.
Okay, a little weird.
Right. And when she tells him the building is closing and he has to leave, he slowly walks to the door, doesn't look back, and very creepily says, "Thank you, I'm sure I'll see you around."
Ah. The phrasing alone violates the normal social script of a teacher-student goodbye.
Totally. But the physical evidence she discovers next is what truly matters. Her purse, which she religiously kept tucked inside a heavy desk drawer, has been moved.
Where?
It is sitting out in the open on a student chair.
Oh, that's not good.
No. She frantically checks it, but nothing is missing. The cash, her credit cards, her keys, everything is there.
So her logical brain takes over.
Exactly. She assumes he thought about stealing something, felt guilty, and stopped. She brushes it off. Fast forward a few days. She and her husband are enjoying a summer night in their backyard. Their 7-year-old son is sleeping over at a cousin's house.
Thank goodness.
Right. Suddenly, they hear rustling behind their garden shed.
Oh, man. The husband goes out with a flashlight, right?
Yeah, he finds the shed door slightly ajar and spots what looks like muddy footprints. But he immediately second-guesses himself. He rationalizes it, thinking maybe he left it open earlier and his anxiety is just acting up.
The next morning, the teacher wakes up to find her own back door is slightly ajar.
Yes. But again, she rationalized the anomaly. She assumes her husband just forgot to lock it after he came back in from checking the shed.
We always want to find the logical, safe answer.
We do. But that night, lying in bed, she cannot sleep. She feels an overwhelming, visceral sense of wrongness. She gets out of bed, walks out into the dark hallway, and freezes.
Oh, I know where this is going.
Standing at the far end of her hallway, right outside her 7-year-old son's bedroom, is the silhouette of a dark figure. She flicks on the hall light. It's Ben.
Her high school student. Standing silently inside her home in the middle of the night.
And he doesn't panic. He just smiles at her and says, "Hey, Miss Jones, nice house."
That is sickening.
And then he turns, walks straight into her son's empty bedroom, and shuts the door. She notices he's holding some kind of object in his hand, but she can't make out what it is. She runs, dials 911, and screams for her husband.
What does the husband do?
He charges down the hall and kicks open the son's door just in time to see Ben climbing out the second-story window. Ben drops to the ground, rolls, and sprints off into the night.
And the police response is where the system completely breaks down.
Oh, totally. They go to Ben's house, and his parents provide a rock-solid alibi, claiming he was asleep in his bed the entire night.
Because there was no sign of forced entry on the doors and absolutely nothing was stolen from the property, the police state there is no actionable evidence to arrest him.
So what does this all mean? The family puts it together. Ben didn't steal money from the purse back in the classroom. He took her driver's license out, memorized or copied her home address, and put it back.
Which is horrifying.
This is a modern-day Trojan horse scenario. The threat bypassed all of their home's physical security, the locks, the fences, the neighborhood, because the infiltration actually started in a completely safe, highly regulated professional environment.
The classroom.
Yeah, he got the keys to the castle while she was standing at a chalkboard acting as his educator.
This raises an important question about the unseen psychological lives of the people we interact with daily. The teacher noted that Ben was always respectful, a, quote, nice kid.
Right.
But underneath that polite, brilliant academic exterior was a mind capable of orchestrating a premeditated home invasion.
What really fascinates me is the concept of mother's intuition that she heavily emphasizes in the source. Because she couldn't sleep that night. It's like her brain was keeping a running tally of these tiny, seemingly unrelated errors in her environment and finally sounded an alarm.
That's a perfect way to describe the brain's predictive processing network. We call it intuition, but it isn't magic. It is millions of years of evolutionary biology and neuroscience at work.
Really? How so?
Well, human beings have two parallel processing systems. Our conscious brain, the prefrontal cortex, is highly logical, but it is very slow. It's the part of the brain that tried to smooth things over, saying, oh, my husband left the back door open, or Ben just wanted to steal some cash, no big deal.
Because the conscious brain hates unresolved anomalies. It wants to go back to a state of rest.
Precisely. But underneath that, the subconscious brain, which is driven by the amygdala, is a highly advanced, incredibly fast pattern recognition machine. It doesn't care about logic. It cares about survival.
Oh,
Yeah, it
wow.
was absorbing all the microdata that the conscious brain was ignoring. It registered the anomaly of the moved purse. It registered the eerie, non-standard tone of his voice. It cataloged the shed door, the ambiguous footprints, and the unlocked back door.
So it was putting the puzzle pieces together long before her conscious mind realized she was being actively hunted.
Exactly. So that restlessness she felt lying in bed wasn't just insomnia. It was her survival instinct, literally screaming that the baseline pattern of her safe environment had been fatally disrupted.
If she had let her logical brain win, if she had stayed in bed for 10 more seconds trying to rationalize her anxiety, she never would have intercepted him in the hallway.
And the fact that he bypassed the rest of the house and went specifically into her 7-year-old child's room, I mean, the psychological contamination of that space was absolute.
Yeah, they ended up putting the house on the market immediately. They couldn't spend another night there.
I don't blame him.
And that brings all three of these case studies into sharp focus because what we are really looking at across these different accounts is the utter destruction of our constructed safe spaces.
The real monsters in these stories aren't ghosts from a 1950s tuberculosis ward.
No.
They aren't masked strangers wandering out of a slasher film. They are real human beings operating just slightly outside the margins of our everyday lives.
Exactly. They are the desperate individual hidden in the dusty utility tunnel beneath the school. They are the toxic relationship waiting just beyond the tree line of a wealthy, secure neighborhood. And they are the quiet, polite student standing silently in your own hallway.
And all of these terrifying events happened during that specific transition of the school year ending, a time when we are culturally conditioned to just relax.
We celebrate the end of finals, we pack up our desks, we throw massive parties, and we expect a well-deserved break from the tension of life.
But as these sources show, danger does not adhere to an academic calendar. It forces you to look at your own surroundings and the people in them through a much sharper lens.
We hope you got some serious aha moments from exploring the mechanics of these events today. These accounts masterfully demonstrate just how fragile our perceived safety really is.
We build up these massive complex walls. We use logic and empirical evidence to keep away the ghosts. We use hundreds of miles of geographic distance to insulate ourselves from toxic relationships.
And we put heavy deadbolts on our doors to keep away intruders. But all it takes is one person deciding to step over that invisible line to completely shatter the illusion.
The systems we rely on are only as strong as the people participating in them.
Which leaves us with a final lingering thought for you to mull over on your own today. Think about your morning commute, or standing in line at the grocery store, or even sitting at your desk in your workplace.
Yeah.
How much of your daily, moment-to-moment safety relies entirely on a fragile, invisible social contract?
Wow, that's heavy.
It is the incredibly simple, deeply terrifying assumption that the dozens of people walking right past you will just choose not to break the rules today. Like we said at the very beginning, you let your guard down because you think you've crossed the finish line. But sometimes you're just stepping into a completely different kind of darkness.